Welcome to the latest gem. Joining me today are my colleagues, senior consultants, Angela Eskandar and Jen Skeeters. We are here to talk about the critical role of manager training in leave administration. Hi, ladies. Welcome back.
Hi, Gina.
Hi. So every other year, the MMA ADL practice conducts a leave of absence and time away from work survey for the large employer market that provides exclusive benchmarking and in-depth analysis and insights on leave and time off benefits, strategy, and administration. We recently released the results of our 2025 survey, and we found an interesting trend. 72% of all respondents stated that managers having a clear understanding of process and role in the leave administration process is a pain point. So we're going to talk today about that and get some insights from the two of you ladies. So what are the first thoughts that come to mind when you hear that this is a top pain point for leave administration?
This is not at all surprising. The leave space is complex. It's rapidly evolving. There's nuanced employer responsibilities that often fall to managers, regardless of whether the company handles that leave administration internally or outsources it. Managers are really in a unique position because they often hold the relationships with the employees, and they might be the first to become aware of an employee's need for leave. And because of that, they really play a crucial role in making sure that employees are well informed about how to initiate a leave, what actions might be required of the employee, and just overall what to expect. So this is important for both obvious or planned situations, like if employees know that they're having an upcoming surgery or a planned parental leave. But what happens in a situation that's less straightforward? Managers also need to be vigilant and be really alert to situations and recognizing situations that might require an employee to take a leave, even if the employee is not specifically requesting it. So for example, if a manager realizes that an employee is frequently taking time off for chemotherapy appointments or to care for aging parents, a supervisor needs to be aware that this might be a trigger for a need for leave. So employees might not be aware of their leave eligibility or how to request it. And this becomes important for employers because they need to ensure that notice requirements are met under the FMLA. I also think it's really telling from the same survey that we conducted that over 70% of these same survey respondents indicated that a top pain point is also employees having a clear understanding of the process. So managers are really feeling this pressure here, both to clarify their own role in the process as well as to educate their employees.
Just to add to that, it's important to remember that many managers are promoted into their role for being proficient at the job that preceded it. They don't necessarily go to manager school before they become a manager. Knowing this stuff intuitively or even factually is not a given for most managers who likely are very proficient in some areas but have not ever even had to encounter things like this. Additionally, for new managers who are getting promoted into this role, this may completely change the dynamic that they have with their previous peers who now report to them. As Angela mentioned, managers are often the first people to know if and recognize if there's a need for a leave. And whereas in the past they may have spoken openly and transparently with their peers about what might be causing their need for leave, there needs to be a little bit more formality that goes into it once they become a manager. In short, this is just not a core part of their job, and they often don't receive specific training until they're in the role and a problem arises.
So Jen, on top of that, this is not a standard managerial task that they do routinely, like reviewing time off requests. It's really unique to the circumstance, which makes this even more difficult for managers.
So what strategies or solutions have the two of you seen from your clients that help overcome this challenge?
So the most important thing for employers to remember is that managers play a really, really critical role in this entire process. And because of that, they need to be really well supported. That usually comes in the form of training. But this is not a kind of training that you can do one time and assume your managers are going to remember and you never have to go back to it again. As Angela mentioned, this is only coming up for managers once in a great while. So the training needs to be available at all times. At real time when a manager needs it. It should be robust and prescriptive and easily understood. There should be really no room for interpretation on what the manager's role is. It should give them the guidelines and the resources if they are getting to a place where they don't know how to handle it, that they can go to a resource who can help them, usually in HR or in benefits. We found that a lot of times this training works best if it's scenario based. So, what to do if your employee comes to you and complains about something and indicates they may need to take time off of work. This is how you handle it. What to do if your employee tells you that they're expecting a baby, things like that. But it's also important to remember that leave is a gray area. We're not going to be able to identify every scenario up front. So giving managers some just general guidelines about things to say and things not to say or do in situations will help them avoid those potential pitfalls that could get them into trouble down the road. And then once again, underscore for the managers how important their role is. They need to understand that anything they say and do with an employee could eventually have some kind of downstream impact if there's an adverse process or something that causes the employee to take issue with how it was handled.
And I would say too, Jen, in addition to formal training, because these situations may be infrequent and could also be very complicated and involve a number of different leaves occurring at the same time, it's really important for managers also to have access to real-time resource information. And the fact that it should be easily accessible and easy to digest is also really important. We found it to be effective in working with some of our clients to really break things down into checklists and guides, to your point, that are situation specific, that will be helpful in clearly outlining the key action plans, not only for the managers, but for the employees as well. It's also critical to maintain up-to-date and well-documented process information, leave policies, and attendance standards, to make sure that employees are held to the same standards and treated equally in similar situations. We cannot stress enough that these policies must be consistently enforced across an organization.
So my last question for you guys, how can this challenge impact the organization?
It can affect the organization in many different ways, and we really can't overstate that either. First, we'll take kind of the obvious, which is if a manager is unclear what to do in a situation and isn't supporting their employee the way that they need to, this is just going to create a morale issue within the organization. Especially if there's any indication that one employee is being treated differently from another. But potentially more consequentially for the employer, these can lead to real legal action. The governing bodies that oversee the laws that employees are held to and managers are held to are many. We have the obvious EEOC, but also the DOL has a place in this, as well as state laws. And there are differences between how these governing bodies interpret how an employee should be treated and what the rights of the employees are. There's no world where a manager is going to know every law right at their fingertips when they're working with their employees. And that's why giving them just these general tools to work with are so important. There's a list a mile long of lawsuits, typically governed and overseen by the EEOC, that usually started with even sometimes a very well-intentioned action from a manager, making an exception for an employee to work from home when he denied the other employees the same right. That can lead to a lawsuit down the road, or sometimes not so well-intentioned. Maybe someone's leave of absence is creating a hardship on the business, and instead of handling that through the proper channels, they simply terminate the employee. This can lead, again, to lawsuits that have huge financial impact for an employer, not to mention a PR hit, and then again, a huge morale hit on the organization internally.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point about the PR hit, by the way. So thank you guys. Thank you both for sharing your insights today. I appreciate you being here. If you'd like to hear more about our 2025 leave and time away from work survey and the insights gleaned, or if you'd like to participate, you can reach out to any one of the three of us here or click on the link below, and we can provide benchmarking specific to your organization. Thank you both.